Hello, my name is George, and you're watching Plebeian, like me, reacting to the announcement stream. So hopefully you're gonna enjoy because I have no clue how this game
Hi,
works.
I'm Chris Wilson from Grinded Gear Games. Welcome to our live stream and thanks so much for joining us today. Our team had a lot of fun putting together Path of Exile's 3.15 expansion, and we've got a lot to share with you. Today's live stream is a busy...
Okay, so we're probably gonna skip the expansion trailer because I watched it, so you may click the card up there if you want to watch me the trailer. Okay, let's skip to the expansion leak content reveal.
Alright, I've got a lot to tell you about. Let's start with the Expedition League itself.
Expedition League.
Long ago, Kalguran explorers came to Rayclast in the hope of colonizing it. Rayclast did what it does best, and they never returned. In the Expedition League, you will meet a group of Kalgurans who have set out on an expedition to investigate the fate of their ancestors and recover special ruined artifacts they left behind.
Retrieving
The ancient
artifacts.
Kalgurans
Good.
underestimated the dangers of Rayclast, and this new expedition is no exception. They need your help to protect them from the undead that rise at their expedition sites.
Okay, so we're probably gonna be just
As you
a
travel through
bodyguard
Rayclast, you'll
to
encounter
them.
the Kalgurans at sites they believe their ancestors attempted to settle in the past. By the time you get there, they will have marked the site with signs indicating where chests are buried, holes indicating where their ancestors lie, and will have possibly unearthed some remnants of past Kalguran settlement.
Okay, so there's gonna be some marks for the treasures. Cool,
Due
cool.
to the unique nature of Rayclast, the Kalgurans have found that the most effective way to excavate these sites is with explosives. And that's where you come in.
Yep.
You'll place a chain of explosives across the expedition site, carefully planning what each blast is going to unearth.
Okay.
Once you push the plunger, any undead freed by the explosions rise from the ground and the slaughter begins.
Oh, so we are gonna explode the stuff and some undead people are gonna try to kill us? Makes sense.
Some of these fallen Kalgur are more difficult and rewarding than others, and have been
Yeah,
indicated
it's
with
actually
special
pretty
markings.
satisfying to watch like the bombs go on, one after each other. Okay, so I see the
Once
chests.
you have defeated the army of undead, you're free to open all of the chests you unearthed and claim your rewards. It's up to you to decide where to place the chain of explosives to maximize your gains. Do you unearth
okay.
a lot of monsters? Do you unearth more special monsters? Or do you go for the chests and try to avoid combat?
Cool.
The ancient Kalguran explorers built structures on Rayclast, and you may encounter remnants of these at excavation sites. These remnants have various modifiers on them that, when destroyed, apply to monsters and chests unearthed from that explosion onwards. Remnants greatly increase drops, but have some very difficult modifiers like immune to physical damage. You'll need to be very careful with your
Ooh, immune
decision
to
of which
physical
remnants
damage.
to chain your explosives through, as they substantially ramp up the difficulty and rewards of
Oh
the
my
encounters.
god, he's almost dead.
Speaking of rewards, there's a lot
Ooh.
of cool stuff to find. Alongside valuable equipment and currency items are Kalguran artifacts and logbooks, which we'll talk about soon. The Kalguran traders have made this expedition to Rayclast in order to recover their ruined artifacts. There are many different types of artifacts, and each of the Kalgurans is interested in a different set of them, with a unique way they want to trade them from you.
Oh, so there's gonna be a different traders for each artifact type, probably?
For this
If I
expansion,
understand
we
it
really
correctly.
wanted to play with the idea of having NPCs that want to trade with you in different ways. So we have themed their behaviors around the concepts of gambling, bartering, upselling, and exchanging. Let's meet the Kalgurans.
Okay.
Tuyen is a mercurial trader who
Hey,
maintains a positive
pirate.
outlook as long as he can, but if you cross a line, his temper changes quickly. Tuyen offers you items with unreasonably high prices, but he's
Okay.
happy to haggle. You can always buy the item at the price he's offering, but if you offer a lower price, he might accept it, counteroffer, or withdraw the item entirely if he is offended by your lowball. He also
Oh,
occasionally sells
bargaining.
currency items, so it's worthwhile keeping some of the artifacts he's looking for on hand just in case you see an opportunity.
Cool.
Grog is an average man.
Yeah, I think the system of the bargaining is gonna be... Yeah, I'm afraid it's gonna be like a best way how to bargain, like some percentages, or maybe they're gonna data mine like what's the best way to get it. So, yeah, I'm not sure about this one.
sells currency
But it
items,
sounds fun.
so it's worthwhile keeping some of the artifacts he's looking for on hand just in case you see an opportunity. Grog is an average man pushed into Rayclust's dangers. He's helpful, concerned, and a bit fearful. He is very happy for you to do the fighting so that he can stay safe on the sidelines. He loves making deals and trying to
better
upsell
be.
you. If you buy one of the items that Grog offers, he'll try to offer you a more complex deal where he improves the item via crafting. If you accept this deal, he'll try to upsell you again and again until you eventually walk away with your purchase. If you can't afford one of these incremental upgrades, you can leave and come back later with enough ruined artifacts to cover the cost. Because you don't get to supply your own starter item for this process, and have to select an item with promise from the range that he offers, his incremental crafting upgrades are priced rather cheaply.
Okay, so
Gwenin is
the upgrades are gonna be cheap, quote unquote, because he's trying to upsell you. To be honest, I'm not native to English language, so I might not have like understood comprehend like the whole thing that he's up to. So basically, he tries to sell you an item, and then offers you like cheaper upgrades, if I understood correctly. Probably, hopefully. Okay, sounds cool.
You eventually walk away with your purchase. If you can't afford one of these incremental upgrades, you can leave and come back
And
later.
yeah, I can get back there. Yeah, for the upgrades.
Because you don't get to supply your own starter item for this process, and have to select an item with promise from the range that he offers, his incremental crafting upgrades are priced rather cheaply.
Ah, okay, so you cannot bring like your item and want him to upgrade it. You need to buy it from him and upgrade the one that you bought. Okay.
Gwenin is a cynical gambler
Gwyn.
who claims that luck depends on how hard you believe. So you really need to convince yourself that you're going to get that headhunter. If you don't, it's your fault. Gwenin shows you a
What?
set of base types with unknown properties. When you gamble...
Oh, so it's basically greed from Diablo 2. Fucking Kadala, mate. Fucking greed, mate. Oh, jeez.
You'll receive a random item of that base type back.
It's
It
a
could easily
gamble.
be a random magic item that you have no use for,
Yeah.
but can sometimes be a valuable, rare, or unique item. It's probably
That's
best
cool.
to prioritize gambling on base types that are most relevant to your character.
Yeah, that's
Once
cool.
you have
That's cool.
exhausted all the items that interest you, it's possible to use a specific new currency item to re-roll the gamble window to a set of new
Okay,
items
okay.
at your current level. Sometimes a base type shows up that is a lot more expensive than it would otherwise be, and gambling on this item has a higher expected value than normal. You're taking the risk, though, that it could still be junk.
Fire resistance.
Danig, Warrior Scald, is the
Yeah,
heart
that's
of
cool.
the expedition, its brave leader and lawmaster. Danig is interested in specific types of ruined artifacts and wants to trade these from you for a variety of options, such as currency that lets you re-roll vendor inventories, logbooks, or artifacts that other Kalguran traders are looking for. You can talk to the traders in the wild, in town, or in your hideout. They grant you access to your expedition locker, which is like the heist locker, a lockbox for League-specific items, which can be accessed in all three places also. We're adding the affinity system to these lockers. Among the many relics of the ancient Kalgurans you might find at their expedition sites are logbooks. These ancient books chronicle the locations that their ancestors visited in their exploration of Rayclust. A logbook item can be rolled to have a set of explicit mods, like an endgame map. Each
Okay,
location
so it's
within the
basically a
logbook
map.
has its own implicit mods, as well as a theme that controls what types of remnants can be found there. Talk to Danig in your hideout and give him a logbook you have found to go on an expedition to one of the locations it describes. These are all exotic places that no exiles have ever traveled to before.
Yeah, so it's basically a map, yeah.
Just like
Cool.
how a blighted map was one giant blight encounter with no natural monsters, the expedition you go on from a logbook is one giant expedition. Expeditions from logbooks are not only different because of their large size, but because there are special objects that you can interact with using explosives.
Okay,
For
special
example,
objects.
trees that contain monsters or items, passageways that reveal chests or bosses, and so on.
Cool.
Speaking of bosses, there are some formidable ones for you to seek out, and a set of valuable new unique items and base types that can only come from expedition content.
Okay, as
The
usual.
Kalguran people are not from Rayclust, so the items do not have the same defensive properties that ours do. Instead of armor, evasion, and energy shield, they have ward. This new base type is a
Ward.
pair of boots that grants ward and can get mods that improve it. The way that ward works is that you have a certain amount of it, and that amount is fully deducted from the first incoming hit that you receive. Your ward is then disabled and takes 5 seconds to re-enable. At that point, the next hit you receive is substantially mitigated in the same way. It's quite a different style of defensive property and works very well in conjunction with systems like evasion, block, or dodge. As the
Okay,
undead
so it's the new defensive trait. Or I don't know, not trait.
Receive is substantially mitigated in the same way.
Mitigation
It's
way,
quite a different
yeah.
style of defensive property and works very well in conjunction with systems like
Yeah, so it's
evasion,
good
block,
against
or
like
dodge.
being one shot by a
As
new
the
mob,
undead enemies you unearth in
but it takes 5 seconds to recharge.
Expedition
Yeah.
encounters are fallen Kalgoran explorers. They also have a ward rather than traditional defenses. This unique helmet allows you to go all
Increase and increases and reduction. What? Bruh, I cannot read. Oh, okay. Increases and reductions to maximum energy shield instead apply to ward. Ooh, that's cool.
in with ward as a defensive option for your character. It causes all increases to energy shield to affect your ward instead, grants you a bunch of ward, and helps it recover faster. This
Oh, so you can also increase the restoration of the ward. Okay,
Ward
it's
instead
faster. That's
grants you a
nice. So
bunch of
it's
ward
it's
and
not
helps it
like
recover
static
faster.
5 seconds.
This other unique helmet is also on a new base type that grants ward instead of other defense types, but its properties don't interact with ward. Instead,
Battle
it prevents you
Mage.
from dealing critical strikes and grants you Battle Mage, which adds spell damage equal to the damage of your main hand weapon.
Spell damage equal to your main hand weapon. Ooh, okay.
The new base types and uniques I showed you here are just some of the ones you'll be able to discover when you play next week. So that's the Expedition League. Each of the developers I have spoken to has liked a different aspect of it, but I have really personally been enjoying the different trade mechanics offered by the Kalgoran NPCs. The gamble window takes me back 20 years on a nostalgic trip, and Tuyin's haggling manages to capture the intense feeling I get when negotiating. And anyone who really knows me knows how much I love negotiating. This expansion also
Ooh, new
promises
skills.
to massively shake up the path of Exile
Let's
meta.
go.
And we're doing that by introducing new gems. Lots and lots of new gems. For quite a
Lots
while
and
now,
lots being
the way
19.
we've approached new skills in Path of Exile expansions is to make a bunch of gems themed around an entirely new build or dramatically augmenting a few existing builds. The blood skills in the Ultimatum expansion are a good example of this. While this approach is great in
I never played any of the blood skills. I didn't like
terms of
that.
creating interesting new builds, it
Or
doesn't
at least
always
I
affect every character game-wide. In order to achieve this big metagame shakeup, we've come up with a crazy idea for the Expedition expansion. Adding a gigantic pile of new gems at once, spread among as many different playstyles as possible. Each of these gems can of course be used by many different classes, but we use the list of 19 ascendancy classes for inspiration when planning these gems. Our goal here is that regardless of which build you're
Oh,
playing,
fucking
there will be new gems that you can add
wizard.
to your character. Let's go through the 19 new skill and support gems. The Earthbreaker support gem can be linked to any slam skill. Upon use, it summons an ancestor totem that uses that slam on your behalf. In this example, we've created a build that summons multiple ancestor totems that each wield tectonic slam. As you can see,
Wow.
this build covers a large area in fiery death while you get to stay out of harm's way. This is a powerful
Okay.
option for chieftains in particular due to the various totem bonuses available on their ascendancy passive tree. Adept players will also be wondering if the Earthbreaker support allows you to create leap slamming totems, and the answer is absolutely.
Holy slamming totems!
As with other ancestor totems, the Earthbreaker support also provides a buff to you, granting some increased area of effect with melee skills. Rage Vortex provides a new way to consume your rage, unleashing a whirling vortex that rapidly hits enemies within its range. It gains damage and area of
Rage
effect based on
Vortex.
how much rage was sacrificed.
Okay.
The vortex slows down when enemies survive being hit by it, causing it to deal intense damage to tough targets.
Okay.
While
Makes
you can only
sense.
have one rage vortex active at a time, characters such as berserkers who are able to generate a lot of rage quickly will find it a great way to augment their damage output.
Uh-huh. Do you think it's gonna be possible to build what's it called, General's Cry, and each of the generals should like fire one of the
Bone Shatter strikes your enemies.
what's it called?
Characters such as berserkers who are able to generate a lot of rage quickly will find it a great way to augment their damage output.
Yeah, one of the circles. It's gonna. Yeah. Ooh.
Bone
Okay.
Shatter strikes your enemies
Bone
with a forceful
Shatter.
blow. If an enemy is stunned by this attack, a powerful shockwave is released. The area of effect of the shockwave is determined by the duration of the stun you inflicted.
Stun build.
Each time you use Bone Shatter against an enemy, you take physical damage yourself and gain a trauma stack. The more stacks you have, the more damage Bone Shatter will deal to both you and your enemies. This self-damage mechanic makes the Juggernaut the ideal class for this skill, because they have easy access to lots of armor to mitigate the downside. Also, the Juggernaut has Ascendancy passives that grant increased stun duration, which help make sure the shockwave is as large as possible. Defiance Banner is a new purely defensive...
I never tried to... Yeah, I'm pretty new to Path of Exile, so I explored just a couple of like possibility ways how to play the game, and I have not touched stun or stun duration at all, so might be interesting. I'm not sure.
While you carry the Defiance Banner, it increases the armor and evasion of nearby allies while reducing the critical strike chance of nearby enemies. It also gains stages while carried near enemies and can be placed on the ground to enhance its effects. When the Defiance Banner is placed, it inflicts a taunt on enemies for a duration based on the number of stages the banner had accumulated while it was carried. Enemies affected by this taunt also deal less damage to all targets. The next new skill is Shield Crush, which swipes your shield towards enemies and sends out forceful waves of damage based on the stats of your shield.
That sounds fun.
Can enemies with up to 2 hits at once. So while Shield Crush is great against groups, it's also effective against single targets and can be used alongside Shield Charge and Spectral Shield Throw. We've improved both of these skills so that the overall aggressive shield build is more powerful.
Okay. I like wearing shield in games, so that's pretty cool.
Gem can only support strike skills and is basically like a mini headhunter. When a supported strike kills a rare enemy, you'll steal one of its modifiers. Obviously, this gem can't be as crazy as the full headhunter experience, so it comes with some restrictions. Stolen modifiers can persist for 20 seconds, and slaying another rare enemy will replace the modifier you have active.
Okay.
The Behead support gem also grants you more damage against enemies on low life. In conjunction with the Slayer's Bane of Legends Ascendancy passive, this bonus really embraces the execution theme of the Behead support. Storm Rain is a new bow skill that fires arrows that stick into the ground. These arrows periodically pulse with lightning damage that arcs to nearby arrows. This skill works very well with multiple projectiles because you can quickly set up a large patch of lightning death.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I like this one.
Existing ballista skills in Path of Exile pick their own targets, like sentry guns do. They'll start shooting immediately and will generally target the closest enemies. While this behavior is usually great, sometimes you want fine control over what your ballistas will fire at. The focused ballista
Let's go.
forces your ballistas to pick the same
Wow.
targets as you.
Okay, so it's basically like a sentry build from Diablo 3 that you can like trigger your spell from it.
It also makes the ballistas fire a lot faster than they otherwise would.
Ooh,
The support gem allows you to effectively focus fire on specific enemies such as bosses.
Okay, that sounds
Explosive
fun.
Concoction is quite a novel skill. It introduces several new concepts that haven't been explored with skills before.
Explosive
You can see the
concussion.
Pathfinder throwing an explosive projectile at monsters. Firstly, you may notice that the Pathfinder isn't holding any weapons. This is because Explosive Concoction is the very first ranged skill that can and must be used unarmed. It's also
Ooh, must be used unarmed. Interesting.
the first skill that directly interacts with the benefits provided by your flasks. When you throw your Explosive Concoction onto a targeted area, it deals fire damage and uses available charges from your Ruby, Sapphire, and Topaz flasks to grant bonuses based on what flask charges were used.
Okay.
The skill still works even if you don't have the appropriate flasks or charges to consume.
That's interesting.
Correctly managing your flask setup can greatly enhance the power of this skill. What we really love about this gem is that it brings to life the idea of throwing your flasks at enemies and having them explode. In conjunction with the flask-focused benefits provided by the Pathfinder's Ascendancy passive skills, we're really excited to see what new playstyles are enabled by this gem. This
Yeah,
is the
it's definitely sounds cool, but I'm not sure if that's gonna be for me, the
ambush skill.
playstyle.
It teleports you up to an enemy, blinds them, and exerts your next one-handed melee attack. This exerted attack has a high critical strike chance and multiplier. In addition to this helping your assassinations, you can also use ambush to quickly re-engage targets after dashing away.
Wait, so does it teleport you to them or away from them or both?
Voltaxic Burst grants a buff
Confusion.
that counts down to 0, triggering a burst of lightning damage around you with a portion of that damage converted to chaos damage.
Okay.
Enemies slain by your Voltaxic Burst will also explode, dealing chaos damage around them based on their maximum life. You can stack up many Voltaxic Bursts on yourself at the same time. Consider using duration modifiers to modify the timing of the explosion so that you can cast a skill from safety and then move into a strategic position before it explodes.
Okay, this sounds pretty fun.
When you use Blade Trap, you throw out a mechanical device with 2 copies of your weapon attached.
Blade
These
trap.
blades spin rapidly in a circle a set number of times, dealing damage to anything they pass through. When dual wielding, the trap rotates faster but deals damage based on both weapons.
Okay.
Because it's a trap, Blade Trap behaves a little differently to other attack skills by operating independently of your attack speed. This means you'll have some interesting itemization choices to make and focusing more on damage modifiers rather than the typical focus of maximizing attack speed.
Cool. Never played trap, so
Summon
again.
Reaper creates a single powerful minion that uses
Summon
fast
Reaper.
melee physical attacks which cause bleeding. While
Oh
the
my
Reaper is
God.
active, you can use the skill again to direct the Reaper to a specific location, dealing a
Oh,
powerful attack.
can you
on
have
its
more of
path.
them then?
The
Or
Reaper
is it
wants to
just
be your
one?
only minion. It
Ah,
reduces the
only
life
minion.
and
Okay,
damage of your
that's
other
cool.
minions, and will consume them to heal itself and gain damage and speed buffs. When designing
Okay.
this new skill for the Necromancer, we wanted to explore the idea of having a single ultimate minion. While there were ways to somewhat achieve this before, the Reaper is quite different in its abilities and interactions with other minions. It also feels much more active and directly under your control. One quick note though, the Reaper will absolutely eat your animated Guardian if you're not careful.
Oh, cool. Okay, I think that's pretty nice because I tried playing some minion builds, and what I don't like is like having the full screen full of minions and like. Yeah, this is cool actually, because it's like marionette. You have like one minion that you control. That's cool. I might try that actually. I don't like minion
Forbidden
build, but
Rite
that
is a
seems
powerful
very
new spell
nice.
that fires an exploding chaos projectile at a targeted area.
Okay, so this was the blazing salvo-ish looking spell. It's
It also
for
targets a selection
which?
of enemies in an area around the player's location and fires projectiles at them too. But be careful, Forbidden Rite also inflicts damage on you when cast. If you can
okay.
find a clever way to mitigate this harmful downside, you'll have devastating and widespread damage at your fingertips.
Ooh. Yeah, this seems OP.
The Eye of Winter is a
Eye
large
of
projectile
Winter.
that fires out a barrage of cold projectiles in a spiral formation as it travels. When it reaches
Yeah, so this is basically Winter Orb from Diablo.
its maximum distance or collides with the terrain, it explodes, firing out even more projectiles in a spiral. This type of skill is one we've been wanting to bring to Path of Exile for a long time, and we felt this new collection of skills was the perfect place to showcase it. This Inquisitor is using the new Battle Mage's Cry skill, which taunts nearby enemies and exerts your subsequent attacks, causing them to trigger a linked spell in your next melee hit.
Ooh.
Here you can see the player taunting enemies with Battle Mage's Cry and using Consecrated Path to teleport to enemies. The slam is exerted, triggering Firestorm to rain down on those enemies.
Okay,
In order
that
to
seems
assist
cool.
with scaling both attack and spell damage, the buff this Warcry provides lets your spell damage apply to your attacks. This property is usually only available on wands and certain unique items. Mana Bond is a somewhat unusual gem in that its source of power relies on your current mana. Upon use, it creates a rune that explodes at a location you're targeting.
Ooh.
This explosion can either deal more damage or cover a larger area depending on the state of your mana. The more mana that's missing from your mana pool,
Cool.
the more damage Mana Bond will deal, as it converts a percentage of your missing mana into added lightning damage. The more full your mana pool is, the more area the explosion.
Yeah, I like the pattern that it creates. That looks cool.
This means that being adept at managing your mana pool becomes highly advantageous. For example, having slightly higher mana while clearing a map provides greater clear speed, but when fighting tougher enemies, having a lower current mana amount is better.
Wow, that's cool. Mana Bond.
Absolution has been designed for Guardians as a spell version of Dominating Blow. Absolution deals a damaging shockwave in a targeted area. When it kills an enemy, it summons a Sentinel of Absolution, which also deals damage by casting Absolution itself. The Sentinels also periodically cast a larger version of Absolution on the cooldown. While the Sentinels version of Absolution can't summon even more minions, they are a powerful army to fight against.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I like this one.
Spectral Healer
Let me just check the camera because it blinked. Yeah, it seems everything's fine. Nice.
Vortex throws a spectral copy of your melee weapon, which spirals outwards from you, dealing damage to any enemies it passes through.
Ooh, so
The
it's
design of this-
basically hammered in from the other three.
That's what we always wanted Val's Spectral Throw to be.
Yeah.
We thought it was a really fun idea for a skill, but because of the limitations caused by the soul-gathering requirements of Val skills, it wasn't possible to use Val's Spectral Throw as a primary skill. Now that Spectral Helix can live up to this purpose, we've reworked Val's Spectral Throw, which we'll reveal closer to release. One of the other issues that Val's Spectral Throw had was that it didn't work very well in indoors areas. However, Spectral Helix improves upon this, as the projectiles that spiral outwards can also bounce off of walls and proceed to hit enemies,
the bounce is
rather than
nice.
simply disappearing upon collision.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I'm gonna like that one because I don't like the hammered
Over the
in
last few years,
from
Path of
Diablo.
Exile has really suffered from player power creep. As a consequence of trying to make compelling content, each expansion we release.
Okay, he's gonna be talking about balance, and I have not like completed like any of the end game stuff, so I'm not sure of that I can add anything to this. But I'm gonna listen
more
either way.
axes on which to improve their character, more effective skills to use, or ways to craft better and more powerful items. Measuring from closed beta to now, this Expedition expansion is our 30th Path of Exile release. The amount of power creep varies per release, of course, with systems like Ascendancy classes providing, like 20, 30, 40% power creep at once? Like with Compound Interest, it would only take 8% more player power per expansion from new items, crafting, character systems, item acquisition opportunities, and new skills for player power to grow tenfold since the game has been out. And tenfold is...
Yeah, after the harvest, it's pretty steep. Some of the harvest crafts were pretty insane that I saw.
We measure the increase in player power to be. We may nerf the most out-of-hand cases every launch, but we're only reducing them back down to close to the new baseline. The average Path of Exile character gets more and more powerful. While we do occasionally add new endgame challenges that are appropriate for the current power level of top characters, the rest of the game just becomes relatively easier and easier. Some games handle this by just endlessly and exponentially scaling monster life and damage to counteract player power growth. Eventually, the numbers get too large and you need to crunch them all down again. This is a really cheap approach and makes the game feel like a treadmill where the developers are just turning a knob as they hand you new power, keeping you in the same place forever. We don't want to treat Path of Exile like that, and hence our solutions are more complicated. At the same time, one of the issues is that players will always pick the most powerful way of interacting with any game system, even when that's not actually fun to play. This leads to behaviors like Flask Piano, or the way that everyone just picks support to basically add pure damage. As game designers, it is our responsibility to make sure that the most powerful behaviors are also the most fun to engage with. With that in mind, the balance changes that we are making in Expedition are far-reaching and are going to affect almost all characters. Our goal is not to just nerf specific builds, but to improve the game, its challenge, and to make sure that people want to pick fun build choices.
Okay, that sounds promising.
Anyone who played Path of Exile during its closed beta 9 years ago can attest to how challenging the campaign was to play through. Early monsters were dangerous and terrifying, able to kill a character in a few seconds of inattention. Players feared going into the ship graveyard cave because of the Flicker Strike ghosts. They were careful around rowers because a couple of unlucky charges could outright kill them.
Couple of unlucky charges. Oh my god, he got fucking one shot by first charge. What the fuck? I mean, making it more difficult sounds pretty scary to me because when I try to play on hardcore, I usually fucking die to, I don't know, Kitawa 2 or what's it called? Justice, no, Innocence. Innocence 1 is pretty dangerous. Yeah.
Was a pretty terrible idea. Nowadays, however, the game is a lot easier. We added level 2 and 4 support gems without increasing the difficulty of the game to compensate at all. Modern League mechanics shower the player in rare items from early levels, and we didn't make the game any harder in response.
Okay,
in fact,
makes sense.
It's very interesting to compare the difficulty of League content with that of the base game. For a few years now, we've been shipping difficult leagues where monster life and damage values are a lot higher than the regular monsters that players fight between those League encounters. Players enjoy League content because it's challenging. They also told us they really enjoyed the Path of Exile 2 demo at ExileCon, and it was tuned to be almost punitive in terms of difficulty. One thing we learned from building that demo was that it's okay for some monsters to be able to run 20 to 40% faster than the player. In Path of Exile 1's first act, there isn't a single monster that moves faster than the player's default movement speed. We are rebalancing the campaign to be challenging. So far, we have focused mostly on Act 1, but with each coming expansion, we'll be extending this further. Our plan is that within a year or so, we'll have reviewed or touched every single monster in the game.
So all the speeding indies are gonna be dying because the mobs are gonna be more difficult. It's gonna be fun.
This challenge probably won't stop our most skilled players easily dominating the campaign or running through it to get to maps quickly. It will mean that players who engage with the content will find a consistent difficulty level between League content and regular content. It's worth noting that the behavioral and balance changes to monsters will definitely affect their map versions.
Okay.
For quite some time.
Yeah, I think that's a good change because the power creep is like super high, so making it more difficult is gonna be probably a good thing.
Path of Exile players and
Oh,
developers
flask
have been
system
keen for a
rework.
big rework to its flask system.
Yeah.
In the endgame, flasks grant really powerful buffs for a number of seconds after use, and these buffs allow the player to kill monsters quickly, filling the flasks up so they can be used as soon as they run out. With 5 such flasks equipped, the correct behavior was to spam the 1 to 5 keys repeatedly to keep all the flasks constantly up without any downsides. This flask piano playstyle was popular enough that players were improvising devices to hit all of those keys at once. Spamming the same set of keys repeatedly to get a powerful set of buffs that rival the power you get from your entire set of equipped items is not a fun game mechanic.
Nope,
it's
it isn't.
unbalanced and certainly isn't nice on your wrist. It prevents us from balancing the game well for players who aren't smashing their keyboard constantly and seriously restricts the design space we can use on flasks. In addition, certain unique flasks completely outclass other ones in terms of raw damage output.
Okay.
It was pretty clear to us that Path of Exile will be a lot better if we did some serious work on flasks to make sure that their incentives were aligned with fun rather than with spamming blindly.
Yeah, I remember that I'm watching Quinn a lot and he definitely has been complaining about this. I usually died before I could use like the best 5 flasks, but yeah.
Most utility flasks and unique flasks have been rebalanced. Expect a lot less permanent power from flasks.
Okay.
Flasks that provide raw defense or raw power are the ones with the biggest nerfs. Some flasks have been selectively buffed a bit if they were underpowered or less popular. In the Expedition expansion, there are now 3 ways that you can use flasks. You can either continue to use the rebalanced ones the traditional way, or you can apply one of the 2 new types of currency items to your flasks. The Instilling Orb and Enkindling Orb drop as part of the regular drop pool from regular monsters and chests.
Okay, so Enkindling Orb. Add an enchantment to utility flask that will improve it, but prevent it from gaining charges during its effect. Ooh, okay. Replaces any existing enchantment. Instilling Orb. Adds an enchantment to utility flask that will cause it to be used when certain conditions are met. Okay, that's interesting.
The Instilling Orb will cause a flask to be used automatically upon a specific condition being met. For example, when its charges become full or when you become affected by Ignite.
Okay, that's
this
cool.
means that in the cases where you would previously want to time a specific flask usage, you can now rely on it happening automatically, with the only trade-off being that it may consume charges that you otherwise wouldn't intend it to. There are a variety of different conditions, and a random one is enchanted onto your flask, overwriting the others each time you use an Instilling Orb on it. The Enkindling Orb prevents utility flasks from gaining charges while active, but provides a big boost to their effect, duration, or various ways they interact with their charges.
Yeah, so you're gonna be very careful, like using inhibitors because you cannot regain during combat.
Various different types of boosts, so you can use
no, not during combat, but during the effect.
Yeah. For the one that you want. When a flask removes a curse, it no longer applies a period of immunity to curses. Flasks that remove ailments now only provide a period of immunity to that ailment if they actually removed it. So if you get ignited, use a dowsing flask to remove the ignite and to gain immunity for a while. You can't spam the flask before you're ignited to be permanently immune. If you want permanent mitigation of ailments, there are other options for your build. Note that we have rebalanced ailment mitigation in general, so there aren't a few options that completely outclass the rest. Monster density in Path of Exile gets a lot higher as you play through the game. When we initially balanced flask charge generation a decade ago, we did not anticipate the levels of monster density we would reach by 2021. Monsters in Acts 6 through 10 now generate fewer flask charges, and monsters in maps generate even fewer still. So now there's a lot more strategy involved with flask use. Flasks don't gain as many charges, so are a little harder to constantly spam, and aren't designed to provide such a powerful slew of permanent buffs. But you can control which provide larger than normal effects and which are triggered automatically as part of your build. We have reworked existing flasks such as Basalt and Aquamarine flasks and have introduced new Corundum and Gold flasks.
Corundum. 30% increase stun threshold. Okay, cannot be stunned if you've been stunned during a flask effect. And gold flask increase rarity of items found. Cool.
For a while now, we have been concerned with a power gap between support gems. There are gems that grant huge multiplicative damage bonuses, and there are gems that do a bunch of stuff you don't really care about. When you're building a character, by far the correct choice is just to stack on all the multiplicative damage bonuses and ignore all the interesting utility support gems because their opportunity cost is just too high. We are reducing the damage bonuses on the support gems that are clearly just about huge damage boosts and trying to give them impactful and appropriate downsides. For example, the Controlled Destruction support gem now penalizes critical strikes multiplicatively.
Ooh.
Overall, this works out to a total of somewhere around 20%, potentially as high as 40% damage reduction for a character using a fully 6-link skill with entirely damaged support gems. There's much less impact for characters that use utility support gems or those who didn't have a 6-link setup. This achieves two goals for us. Firstly, the gap between good and bad support gems has been narrowed, creating more interesting build opportunities. Secondly, player damage output in the endgame is reduced, which is a goal for this balance pass. As I mentioned, we want to iteratively restore challenge to Path of Exile. It's worth clarifying that we haven't buffed unused utility support gems as part of this balance pass. It's fully intentional that it's a reduction of power for the most damaging ones.
Reduction for most of them, yeah.
When we're designing skills for Path of Exile, the mana cost of a skill is a mechanism to allow us to have larger impactful effects. Bigger skills should cost more mana to cast. Unfortunately, this entire mechanism is currently bypassed by triggering skills as this skips their mana cost. This basically means that we can't design really powerful spells. In 3.15, triggering skills through support gems will require paying their mana cost. In fact, sometimes it now costs more than casting the gem by hand. Thankfully though, this isn't very hard with well-constructed characters. Certain support gems that were originally disabled from supporting triggered skills, like Arcane Surge, can now be used to support them. Builds that use triggered skills are some of the most interesting characters in Path of Exile, and they are often the best representation of the craziness that our character customization system allows. We're confident that they are just as powerful as before, but we now have more interesting design space to explore with future skills.
Yeah, it definitely felt like cheating
Now
when you
let's talk
trigger a
about
skill.
movement skills. As you know, most interaction with monster behavior is essentially bypassed if you're using an extremely effective movement skill. This is okay if you're specialized deeply into customizing that skill, but it's currently the default state for any character if you use Flame Dash, Smoke Mine, or Dash without any further investment. These skills have been rebalanced to be more in line with other movement skills. These are not huge numeric nerfs, but do mean that there is scope for improving the performance of the skills by specializing around them. There are many other balance changes in 3.15, which you can read about in the Balance Manifesto and patch notes next week. To be honest, there are a lot of nerfs here. We completely understand that this level of change will make some people nervous, but it's time we start actively combating power creep and fixing game systems that haven't been working the way we intended them to. I think that the metagame of Expedition is going to be fascinating. The reduction of overall player power, combined with all of the opportunities from the new skills and flask system changes, should create entirely new sets of builds that we haven't previously seen. You guys are always surprising us with what you do, and we can't wait to see what you come up with here.
Yeah, Path of Exile, well, it already passed because I'm watching this later than this was taking place. So, I think that's gonna be all. Yeah, super effects. Yeah, if you want, you can buy these stuff because Path of Exile is free, so I fully support like buying and supporting Path of Exile. I would probably buy more stash tabs rather than this, but yeah, if you want, you can go ahead. Okay, that's gonna be all from me. I hope you enjoyed even like my very limited commentary, and I'm gonna probably see you in the next league. Bye!